Good morning. I'm Joanne Ferguson Twist, immediate past chair of Meet Puerto Rico's Board of Directors. I would like to tell you a little bit about this year's recipient of the Hall of Fame, Gilberto Kiko Pesquera Award, who also happens to be my mentor and my dad, Paul Ferguson. But he's not only my mentor. I'm sure most would agree that he has served as role model and teacher to many in the industry today. Paul came to Puerto Rico at age 15 when his parents, Charles and Betty Ferguson, moved here from Haiti and opened Travel Services, Inc. Paul entered St. John's School his junior year, and even at that age, it was clear he was a leader. He was elected Student Council President 1 year later. Paul grew up in the industry, writing airline tickets and working both in the office and the field with guests. The family car was a Volkswagen van, one of the sightseeing vehicles used for tours during the day. After working his way through college, he was hired by E.F. McDonald, a pioneer in the incentive travel business, who later became Carlson Marketing Group, and some of you may recognize by their most recent incarnation, AMIA. Prior to his joining that incentive house, most of the trip directors were older, more mature individuals. As he tells it, he was one of their first experiments with hiring young college graduates to travel with programs, and apparently it was a successful one, given the number of young TDs employed since. This photo is Paul as a 21-year-old trip director doing the twist at a villa in Rome with the Ford Group in 1962. At about the same time, the San Juan Puerto Rico Convention Bureau was being formed. Our company was one of the original members, along with Pete Sutherland, the general manager of the San Juan Intercontinental Hotel, now the El San Juan, and Charlie Darmanin from Capital Transportation, amongst others. Paul returned to Puerto Rico in the 60s and speaks fondly of the calls he would get from Mr. Kiko Pesquera, asking him to rush over to meet his site inspection clients to discuss their transfer and touring needs. They were really quite a team. How appropriate that Paul would be the first to be honored following Mr. Pesquera. Paul left for the Navy in '65 and returned in 1969, and by then Mr. Pesquera had become Director of Tourism, and Adolfo Borrata Doria was at the helm. His right hand was Bea Silverman, and in Paul's words, she was a real dynamo. Newly married, Paul took over travel services in 1971 with his wife Evelyn, just in time for a difficult era that hit the tourism industry in the early 1970s. Johnson's Keep the Gold in America program, which was so great for tourism in Puerto Rico, was replaced by Nixon taking the lid off of that policy, and corporations were now given liberal terms which allowed them to hold programs overseas, internationally. Europe, which had suffered such a drop in corporate business from America under Johnson, now opened up with a bang, and Puerto Rico's industry virtually died. Likewise, the Bureau went through its own financial challenges, requiring help from other organizations. It was under these conditions that in 1980, Governor Carlos Romero Barceló approved a bill establishing the San Juan Puerto Rico Convention Bureau as we know it today. At the first ever meeting of the board following the approval of the bill, Paul was there, having been named to the board by Governor Romero Barceló. Pedro de Aldrey, then the Director of Tourism, was on the board as well, as was Fred Dieterle, and of course 12 others. Paul was always proud that Governor Hernando Colón from the opposing party kept him on the board of directors of the Bureau the following term, and that with a 2-year exception, he was elected by the general membership to the board of directors for all of his remaining work years until his retirement. My father has long recognized that for our destination to succeed, there must be true commitment from its stakeholders, a willingness to give back, and to work together towards a common goal. He never aspired to be chairman, but instead was virtually infamous for questioning everything and always speaking his mind. What you see is what you get. He's still a champion for doing the right thing, for being fair and just, and is probably the most ethical man I know, never compromising his values or beliefs, despite the cost. Paul believes in win-win-win. It isn't enough for the company to profit or for the client to succeed. One's vendors or employee also has to benefit for it to be a true success. Having said that, he always puts the client's needs above his own, and his guiding principle has always been, is this in the best interest of our client? He has been widely recognized as the master of the bylaws, and is still considered the historian of the industry. He has never been happy with the practice of measuring Meet Puerto Rico's worth through room nights, recognizing that each traveler that comes to Puerto Rico has a much greater financial impact on our economy than merely a hotel room, and has long lobbied for a change in that measure. I'm happy to say that Meet Puerto Rico accomplished that transition this year. I share his pride in Puerto Rico and his passion for wanting guests to experience all that we have to offer. I know he is pleased that local experiences are now receiving the attention they so justly deserve. I've heard stories of when we had to use AMA buses to transfer visitors during conventions, and were forced to use a set number of taxis for every coach we used. Of his personally going up in a helicopter with bags full of daisies, dropping the flowers over a group during an event, and having to drive guests in a luggage van during a taxi strike so the glass wouldn't be broken by stones being thrown. How on one of the first groups we worked, we had less people than expected to show up, and it was actually our client who explained to us what the concept of a guarantee was. Our destination has changed considerably throughout the past 60 years, evolving from an emerging industry with little infrastructure to a world-class, desirable, incentive-level destination. True, some challenges remain, but we would never have come as far as we have without the commitment, dedication, and love for Puerto Rico of men like Kiko Pesquera and Paul Ferguson.